These days, most manufacturers are focused on digital transformation, but many lack a really clear roadmap to that success, what that really looks like and how to get there. We're all eager, obviously, to achieve the game-changing results that we're looking to make and that await for us as we change how our products are designed, how things are manufactured, and how they're supported. But getting there, right? Like getting there can be an intense journey for sure, and it will be most assuredly require steadfast commitment and vision. In the session that's getting ready to come up, Bob's really going to discuss why initial efforts are slow to deliver on meaningful results and how to ultimately realize significantly impactful outcomes a digital transformation should actually deliver for you, your businesses, your organizations, and your customers. So I'm honored to introduce to you a great partner of PTC's Rockwell Automation. But first, let's take a look at this video.
What does it take to make the world work? To stock our shelves, power our communities, care for those who feel pain, and experience times of great joy. At Rockwell Automation, we make all these things possible. For all of life's moments, milestones, and celebrations. We are there, helping the world work better, faster, stronger, to be more connected and more intelligent. Because we know that when we combine the imaginations of people with the power of machines, anything is possible. Together with the world's innovators, makers, and problem solvers, we stand ready to lead the way, because that is where we belong. Rockwell Automation, expanding human possibility.
When I say Bob, I want you to say Murphy. Help me bring him out. When I say Bob, you say Murphy. Don't let me down. Don't let me down. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the Apex stage, Bob Murphy.
Thank you, Mario, and good afternoon. I hope that provided you a little look into who Rockwell Automation is, but by way of the impact that we have on the industries, and more importantly, the people of our world, by providing enabling solutions that truly do expand human possibility. Now for a few less graphically appealing demographics about our company, if I may. We're about a $7 billion company with some 23,000 folks around the world, a company that has an impressive track record of share owner returns. Our strategy, in its simplest form, is to bring the connected enterprise to life. The connected enterprise is our phraseology around smart manufacturing or Industry 4.0 concepts. It's the practical and powerful convergence of IT and OT in support of driving meaningful business outcomes, be they the need for faster time to market, improved productivity, asset reliability, or risk management. Now let's spend a few minutes talking about where industry is generally at today in search of such aspirations. And we'll get there in a moment. All right. Hang on just a second. Here we go. So here's a question that Rockwell routinely asks, and really it's one that all of us ought to ponder. And if we're honest, we might not care to day in and day out, right? But for those of us here who are familiar with the concept of operational excellence, there's a behavior within that undeniably proven management philosophy that I believe sits atop all of the other elements that it espouses. It's that of leading with humility. Confucius said that humility is the solid foundation of all virtue, and I think he nailed it. If our corporations can't be a reasonably fair witness to where we stand from a competitive landscape, then those who put their confidence in us, our employees, our customers, our stakeholders, they ought to be concerned. And on the important topic of where many companies' digital transformation journeys stand, I'm afraid there's legitimate reason for concern. When we meet with leaders in industry about their future aspirations and how they're rethinking getting work done, we often pose this simple question: is your digital transformation program going fast enough and far enough to support those aspirations? And sadly, with very few exceptions, the answer is rather quickly no. It's not that they haven't heard about the enabling prospects available to them. Let's face it, the concepts of smart manufacturing, Industry 4.0, or the industrial Internet of Things are now well-entrenched business vocabulary. So if they're aware of these concepts and their value proposition is increasingly clear with every passing day, why is it that they're so far behind the power curve of leveraging these enabling technologies and processes to help their people become more confident, more productive, and even more content in their work? This slide depicts some good news and some bad news. L&S Research, in a newly minted study, explored the state of industrial transformation today. And what they found confirmed the untapped value awaiting industry in the form of step function improvements derived from industrial, or, if you will, digital transformation. The good news now is that 28% of the companies surveyed that have left the starting gate are seeing meaningful dividends from their commitment to transform. Not surprisingly, these dividends are most commonly reported as incremental revenue realized or operational cost savings achieved. Said otherwise, they are delivering. Now, the bad news is that 72% of those surveyed reported that they're not there yet. And let's talk about that for a moment. Why might that be? If you look on the right-hand side of this graphic, you'll see this roundabout in the middle, as I would call it. And it talks about programs being stuck in pilot activity. McKinsey refers to this in a rather deliberate term, pilot purgatory. What do I think pilot purgatory is? Well, what I think pilot purgatory is good intentions run slightly amok. And what I mean is that companies are checking out a new technology, an enabling technology, and they'll install that on a machine, a line, maybe one plant. And they will then begin the work of trying to perfect that proof of concept, that pilot, to arrive at the perfect mousetrap, if you will. And 6 months, a year, maybe 18 months will go by, and they're getting close to perfection. But when they look at the P&L of the company, what are they going to see? Quite honestly, not much. Because affecting those enabling technologies on one line, in one plant, is not going to change the P&L trajectory of a company. It simply won't, until what's good enough with that first instance is deployed on more of an enterprise-wide basis to actually affect the P&L of a company. Now let's dive further into why those who are lagging behind maybe are where they are. In these 5 broad categories, here's the status of journeys being taken or not as of this recent L&S research. Now these percentages depict a degree of intentionality that actually doesn't look too shabby at first blush. However, in industry, one of the most powerful enemies every company does battle with day in and day out is simply time. So I'm left to wonder, and I'm honestly concerned about the time horizon of 4 of these 5 broad categories. This disconcerting status, it harkens me back to that opening slide when we ask who is leading your industry. In whatever industry segment those leaders operate in, they clearly would not be biased toward the right-hand side of these categories. If the merits of digital transformation are as proven and as intentional practitioners confidently profess, why then are so many seemingly in a slow motion race to the finish line? The next exhibit might help reveal why. Let's talk about those enabling technologies that far too often get overly mystified within the ecosystem of the industrial Internet of Things. First, it's true, there are many, and at initial exposure they can appear overwhelmingly complex, so much so that some organizations, in viewing that complexity, simply decide we're going to pass. But the reality is that these technologies are indeed proven to a point that they truly don't warrant pilots and proofs of concept as much as they simply require phased implementations like any new installed technology would. The size of these bubbles suggests the rate of implementation of each of these technologies, or technology upgrades, if you will, by those who are considered to be leaders in the digital transformation adoption versus those who are following. On average, we see a 2-to-1 disparity between leaders' confidence and followers' hesitancy. If we only look at the benefits on premise within manufacturing environments, for example, one has to honestly wonder, what are companies waiting on? Who among us as manufacturers doesn't need to far more accurately and efficiently connect and manage and validate and optimize our operations? Becoming digitally enabled, specifically where IT and OT converge, does all that and actually much more. Anyone here find themselves in this very troubling boat? This global phenomenon of concern just might be, I believe, the #1 issue facing manufacturing today. These are actually very conservative estimates of just a few value components that a well-conceived digital transformation delivers. And we should confidently, very confidently surmise that they can directly help offset this increasingly worrisome skill gap concern in industry today. Regardless of where in the supply chain, when we step out of the 4 walls of our manufacturing plants, we'll find similar gains to be had across the entirety of the supply chain. Whether in our upfront sourcing arenas or in our back-end distribution activities, opportunities to exploit digitally enabled solutions are equally ripe for the harvesting across our supply chains. Regardless of where in the supply chain, data truly resides everywhere, across all of our companies. But data that's not real-time, data that's not contextualized, data that's not made available to people where and when they need it is quite honestly of little to no value. I know that as a matter of fact because our own manufacturing operations at Rockwell Automation used to suffer mightily from these very deficiencies. At Rockwell, we were data rich, but insight, or if you will, analysis poor. We had more data lying around in disparate locations and platforms than you could possibly shake a stick at. They were in databases that were disparate. They were in spreadsheets that were disconnected. In many instances, they were recorded manually. So data availability generally wasn't our issue, rather data commonality and data interpretation were our challenges. We were counted amongst those manufacturers who had really good people, routinely having to exert way too much force to get things done, rather than relying on more capable processes powered by more reliable and contextualized data. Simply put, our enterprise wasn't remotely connected. But once you have a common set of data, you can begin to truly contextualize it. And that's where analytics come in. Analytics, the discovery and the communication of meaningful patterns in data, and quite possibly the most integral ingredient for optimizing any production process. These invaluable insights can be leveraged at the device, at the system, and at the enterprise level of any manufacturer, whether they're in the discrete or the process or the hybrid space. And nowhere does that insight provide more value than in the field of quality. Remember that famous trademark saying by a well-known company, quality is job number one? Well, when it comes to leveraging the amazing power of predictive and prescriptive analytics, this is clearly the case in industry today. And I suppose that actually shouldn't surprise us. Largely gone are the days where we can simply rely on one or two shop floor experts to know how our processes are working, just by the sound of the machine or the smell or the color of the batch that's being processed. Today's manufacturing processes are typically far more complex than when I began working on the shop floor at Rockwell Automation 40 years ago. Without the aid of real-time and really accurate data being automatically contextualized for us, the true state of the quality of our processes is often a mystery. But when we start to solve those mysteries and many more by leveraging the proven and powerful digitization principles and technologies, there are rewards that can and absolutely should change the growth and performance trajectory of every single company that employs them. Here you see some evidences of that fact. On the left, within our company, Rockwell Automation, and on the right, what industry analysts have ascertained are the, if you will, the average degrees of improvement in just a few KPIs that each are game-changing in their own right. When I reflect on our company's current digital transformation outcomes, here's what I can confidently share with you. The search for best practices and the ease of proliferating them across the enterprise is no longer our impossible dream. The ability to know how processes are running by machine, by line, and by plant is no longer a job that requires a private investigator. And the previously mentioned enemy of time is now on our side versus working against us. Now let's talk for a couple minutes about what it took to get there. The very good news is that there's a simple, logical, but extremely powerful sequence of steps which, if followed, will help any company get well on their transformational way. It starts with, dare I say, an honest assessment of our current state. And it works through goal alignment across businesses and functions, meaning what is the true north of the aspirations that we're after. And it concludes with a well-conceived and achievable roadmap for enterprise-wide digital transformation. Now, like many good things in business, it's supported by a defined process. Good intentions, not supported by capable processes, often lead to more ruin than they do prosperity. And this is just one example of how you can begin to create the work breakdown structure of a digital transformation journey. Clearly, it's not the only way to success, but it's one that our company subscribes to. And since it's produced some very transformational results for us, we're now spending real quality time with our customers talking about our lessons learned and assisting them with their transformational aspirations. And wouldn't you know, we have a process for that too. It begins with discovery conversations with senior leadership teams where we become attuned to their business imperatives. Then the work transitions to a detailed assessment of their current state, which logically results in a gap analysis. And then that analysis informs the roadmap required to close that gap and achieve the required future state of performance. And of course, then it's all about working through project execution with a firm commitment to transform the enterprise. These are just some examples of how one could approach a transformation journey. As I conclude, allow me to pose that probing question we so often ask our customers to you all here today, who might also be on your own transformation journey. In short, how's it going? Regardless of where you presently are at, in light of where you want to and really need to be, let me encourage you to press on. Maybe that's finally architecting your transformation roadmap. Or if that's done, maybe it's having the fortitude to actually leave the starting gate with the confidence that your destination is incredibly worthwhile. Or maybe it's navigating through the complex waters where new processes and technology converge with people and culture. Or maybe it's just recognizing that perfection can be the enemy of good and even great achievements. Too many of us in this shared experience as manufacturers are not enjoying the benefits we're all entitled to, as depicted here. Remember this slide, which spoke to the outcomes that smart manufacturing through the convergence of IT and OT ought to enable. Well, here are just a few of the focus use cases that we've enabled for our customers that are actively producing meaningful outcomes. Digital transformations truly do create P&L altering value, and the enabling people and process and technology considerations we all need to respect are far more clearly defined than I think some of us currently believe. Now, allow me to end and close with a quote from St. Francis of Assisi, which quite honestly puts all of my commentary to shame. Start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible, and suddenly you're doing the impossible. Thank you, and have a good afternoon.